and welcome to a new episode of Construction Conversation with me, Meera Trivedi.
And me, Latika Narvekar. In today's episode, we have two very special guests joining us. Our first guest is a professor who specializes in Dutch architecture.
Our second guest is a cultural expert. So, sir, what can you tell us about Dutch architecture?
The Dutch architecture industry is one of the most innovative in the world, and it is influenced by the lack of space, the regard for sustainability, the increasing influence of users, and the causes associated with water. The Dutch architectural tradition is known for more than its building design, but also for its total approach to urban planning and complex restructuring. Dutch house building is highly rated for its flexibility and its creativity.
That's certainly very informative. Let's move on to our cultural expert. Sir, what can you tell us about the influence of the Dutch in the field of architecture?
Dutch architecture has played an important role in the international discourse on architecture in three eras. The first of these was during the 17th century when the Dutch Empire was at the height of its power. The second was in the first half of the 20th century during development of modernism. The third is not concluded and involves many contemporary Dutch architects who are achieving global prestige.
Coming to Dutch influence in international architecture, what can you tell us about its impact on India?
One of the most enduring achievements of Indian civilization is undoubtedly its architecture. Indian architecture, which has evolved through centuries, is the result of socio-economic and geographical conditions. The Dutch East India Company largely influenced Indian architecture. In many coastal areas in India, from Surat to Calcutta, signs of Dutch influence remain. Reminders of this Dutch era are still everywhere. Forts, mansions, warehouses, and factories were built by the Dutch using Dutch architecture and Dutch materials. Many of these buildings still remain. In some places, even pavements laid by the Dutch are more or less intact.
So, Professor, what can you tell us about the typical features that are common to Dutch and Indian architecture?
As you can see, Dutch architecture includes a lot of typical features such as earthen floor tiles, earthen bricks, two-panel Dutch-style windows, and steep staircases that are all incorporated in many Indian buildings from the colonial period. Porches, columns, and two-story buildings are also common. Other features include arches and large glass panels. Traditional Dutch architecture also makes extensive use of stained glass.
Dutch presence on the Indian subcontinent lasted from 1605 to 1825. Merchants of the Dutch East India Company first established themselves in Dutch Coromandel, notably Publicate, as they were looking for textiles to exchange with the spices they traded in the East Indies. Their architectural influence can be seen in the form of old houses and libraries along the western coast of India.
India underwent a major architectural metamorphosis with the European colonization, with its impacts lasting for almost 100 years. The Victoria Terminus in Mumbai is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most important marvels of British brilliance.
Recently, we have seen a huge change in the lifestyles of Indians, especially with them borrowing a leaf from the books of the Dutch and adopting to a healthier lifestyle. Wider pavements are being used for cycling rather than driving.
This brings us to the end of today's episode of Construction Conversations. We hope you enjoyed.
Thank you so much to our esteemed guests. It was a pleasure having you.
Me guys, it was a pleasure being here too.
Thank you so much for having us.